Have you ever had one of those conversations where you are speaking about one thing, but it turns out the other person is speaking about something else and you're just not quite meeting together? I was in a Zoom call this past week. I'd been in Zoom calls all day. And Zoom calls are intense because you kind of have that 1,000-yard dead-eye stare at the screen, which you just would never do in real life, but you're worried about looking bored if you're looking away elsewhere. And I was bored. So I had a little flick and wanted to check some things to do with football. No surprise there. And came back to be confused by the decision that was being made based on the conversation we'd had. So I tried to interject before realising that their confused faces were showing me they had moved on in the conversation and were now talking about something different. And I'd entirely missed the topic switch and now was saying something that just seemed a bit weird and irrelevant. Luckily, in our Britishness, we just all fumbled on and ignored the faux pas and acted like nothing had happened, and that worked well. But I think you'd be forgiven when reading today's passage, John 15:26 to 16:15, for thinking, hang on, there's some wires crossed here, because there seems like there's lots of themes that have already come out elsewhere and they come back and repeat and go away. There's some really deep and rich verses that you could sit and meditate on and soak the meaning out, and I hope you do that today. But John seems to repeat themes of persecution, of the Holy Spirit, of who Jesus is and his identity with his Father, and glory and what is to come. And it seems to be repetitive and confused. And why doesn't this section just get ordered topic by topic? Scholars think that John is using this technique where he circles round and repeats topics. He spirals round, but as he repeats it, it gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And this is supposed to draw us into a place of contemplation, into a place of meditation, to really wrestle with these things and allow the truth within them to get into our hearts and change us. So what is the truth that Jesus is trying to explore? Well, Jesus is speaking about how the world will hate him in just the passage before, the opposition he will face, and how we will then face that opposition. That people will oppose us as an act of worship. People will oppose us because they see themselves as doing a moral good. And again, some of the questions we asked earlier in the week of, are we living such a radical life centered on Jesus that we elicit such a strong reaction? I think that question is there, but I think there's another thing that Jesus is explaining here. That actually when the Spirit comes, there is a broader context to what is happening, and that influences how we should see events. That actually the judgment that is coming to Jesus is not revealing and judging who Jesus is, but it's revealing and judging those who oppose him. And that's in the same way, our opponents will be opposed by Jesus. That when people put faith on trial, actually they're weighing up their own hearts. And I think that is a comfort in some of the difficulties we face. That we can think of difficulties as measuring one thing. Right now it might be our endurance, our stamina to keep going, to keep pushing through with all the restrictions and difficulties of this season. But it isn't our stamina and endurance that are being tested. It's our character. It's our devotion to the common good. It's our love. It's our patience. It's our ability to be content with just ourselves and without the busyness of life. Jesus speaks about how the Spirit comes and it convicts people in sin, in righteousness, and in judgment. But that isn't just about conviction of moral kind of right or wrong. Actually, the sin is whether we have accepted him. The righteousness is to whether we know his place alongside the Father and who he is, his pureness, his goodness, his justice. And judgment, that he has condemned the enemy of this world. He has condemned Satan. He has opposed our greatest opponent. But there's this sense that Jesus is also explaining a little bit of something that I think can be confusing. Jesus says, I am going that the Holy Spirit may come. Again, crossed wires, confused conversations circling round. What is happening here? Can Jesus and the Holy Spirit not be in the same place? Are they the same God that is limited to one time or place? Is it somehow that Jesus is like this one figure, but the Spirit comes out in multiple ways, so he has to be kind of condensed and scattered and become something more than physical? Some scholars pushed in that direction and say actually the resurrection was more this spiritual reality where the physical Jesus becomes a spiritual force. But Jesus isn't saying that. Jesus isn't saying that and making a statement about the substance. He's making a statement about timing. Jesus goes to the cross to bring us into a new era, into a new age, that through his death and his bodily resurrection, he will transform the world. And through that transformation of the world, the Spirit will be poured out and will do a new and richer thing. And actually, in the midst of the opposition and destruction that we might face as we turn from everything else and follow Jesus, God's Spirit is at work. Circles of depth, of meaning, so much to enjoy and draw out from today's passage. But the question is, where is the Spirit at work in your trial, in your trouble, in your difficulty today? I hope that as you pray and ask God that he speaks to you in a beautiful way.